Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning for those who spent their night watching the football games. It's a bloody time zone, I know. So today's webinar, the June webinar, is the Agentic AI, and it is specifically addressing the Agentic AI in the telco domain, and that's usually the theme of my webinars. Um, and for those who are actually meeting me for the first time, my name is Karim Rabia, and I have almost like 22 years of experience working on various fields around the telco domain. So mobility, I'm basically coming from a mobile core background and the OSS cloud orchestration. And I'm currently a principal architect in Red Hat, and I exchanged many roles in many operators and service providers and system integrators. I'm also following and working with some standardization groups. Uh, and it happened that academically, I'm also doing my master's currently in AI. So I'm trying to see the technology from different perspectives and bring some, I'd say, easy to interpret content that helps you to build a foundation about the topic, and which is the case today in the agentic AI. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A utility, and the webinar will be recorded and most probably it will be available on YouTube a few days after the webinar. So this is today's agenda, and I have a habit of listing the number of slides because if you want to exit at a point, so you know exactly the number of slides and the volume of the information, so that you can decide where to stop and actually have a holistic view on how we are going to run the webinar for today. So I'm going to explain an overview about the concepts and actually what is agentic AI, the introduction, and this kind of ground rules. And it's 11 slides. And we have like a focused section on what's happening on the telco side. We have also the pillars of agentic AI. I'm selecting some core concepts. I'm not covering all, which somehow leave the door for a part two, hopefully, and then a summary or a key takeaways. Uh, I see Joseph, you're raising your hand. If you have any comments, just please feel free to use the chat utility. Okay, we continue. So first section, the agentic AI overview, or the core concepts. Let's start by a classic starting point that I usually do in my webinars is actually to give the context on how we reach this kind of point of technology and what are the evolution that took us to that point that we are talking about today, which is agentic AI. So I chose the starting point and I split that into like more into mainstream or a Gen AI perspective, and another projection or another plane for the telco. So in 2017, that was the first or the famous research paper. The attention is all you need, coming from the group of scientists backed by Google. And they provided an overview about the transformer architecture that set the stage for the LLMs. On the same year, and not really directly related, but in 2017, from telco perspectives, we embraced the ZSM, or the Zero Touch Network and Service Management HC working group. And we started to talk about Zero Touch Orchestration Framework. And that was organically coming after the rise of the NFV and the NFVO, the NFV orchestration. So that was the time where telcos were really experiencing this kind of orchestration stack in the OSS. In 2020, and that was a leap by OpenAI. Also, another well-known research paper, which is language models are few shot learner. That's actually that proved or demonstrated that transformer architecture can be scaled to actually start a wave, or what we call the LLM. So starting from 2020, the term LLM started to be a mainstream. And in the same time, from TM Forum, from the autonomous network perspective, we have the famous, let me use maybe the laser point. I laser point, yeah. So I hope you can see it. Yeah. So we have the autonomous network framework, the well-known autonomous network framework from the TM forum, where they started to show this kind of autonomous ladder or autonomous network ladders from L0 to L5. And most probably, if you go to LinkedIn, you'll find most of the operators say we are in level 4, we are in level 5. I will explain that. In 2022, in November 2022, that was actually the booming of the Gen AI, where ChatGPT was publicly introduced. And the most interesting thing was the adoption, that it got 100 million users in 2 months. Just to give you an analogy, TikTok took 9 months to get the same traction. So that's a good thing and a well-known characteristics of Gen AI, that it is well, adopted by the community. On the same year, we started to see some focused 3GPP specifications about the intent-driven management, the intent-driven orchestration. And if you are working in the telco domain, you'll find a lot of vendors talking about the intent. This means that orchestrators don't have to go into a resource specific or a very specific detailed parameters of provisioning and these kind of things. They can just express intent. I want to create the service. I want to restore the service to a KPI, and then the underlying tools or utilities do the job. In 2024, and that was really a very significant year for the agents, because Anthropic introduced the MCP, the Model Context Protocol, that allowed the agent, that we will explain in this webinar, to start communicating with tools, external tools, databases, inventories, Git, any kind of tools that would like to communicate with as part of the overall flow. And 2024, we started to see MOUs and start to see white papers and collaborative work by TM Forum and the operators. They said, you know what, we are all working to go to L4 of autonomy, and L4 of autonomy, it refers to nearly fully autonomous, okay, operations, and we will see that also in the webinar. In 2025, last year, Google introduced the A2A, agent to agent. So that's actually the year where, also the agent frameworks started to gain or to be more and more major. If you search about this year, it's called the year of agents, okay? Because Agentic-AI started to be more doable. The interoperability is doable or is achievable. So that's another protocol that also we will cover in this webinar. In 2025, you started to see more and more publications from TM Forum, like for example, the Agentic-AI for autonomous computing, the IG 1444, and also you'll find many white papers from ITSI. So as if that the telco domain is embracing the Agentic-AI era. 2026, where are we now? We've started to see more and more Agentic-AI in production, and especially in the enterprises. You'll start to see, for example, in the latest conferences, many operators started to say, you know what, we are level 4 validated. We have some sort of a multi-agent system or agentic system. Officially in March 2026, the agentic AI is considered one of the 6G use cases. So it is coming. It is coming even by standards. So these are the main waves, and they are all converging into a fully autonomous network driven by agentic AI. So let me just maybe start with a very classic example, a mainstream example about the difference between a Gen AI and the agentic AI. And to those who didn't follow the match, we are qualified to the 32. So we are going to play against Australia. I'm Egyptian. I'm based in Dubai. So let's say I'm willing to attend the match. I go to a chat GPT or any kind of Gen AI client, and I just tell him, get me to Egypt's World Cup match against Australia in the US. Okay. Most probably the answer will be how to go there. Most probably you'll get a checklist. The answer will be, you know what, you need to get a US visa if you don't have. And this is the link of the US Embassy in Dubai if you want to book an appointment. You know what, you have to book a flight, and you have for sure to get the match ticket. They say it's very expensive, but you have to get it, and you have to also afford, or you have to book a hotel. So that's a Gen AI characteristics, right? You ask, it generates traffic to respond to you. It brings like how to do the task, how to reach your objective. So they do the smart thing and I will do the hard thing. While agentic AI on a high level, actually agentic AI, it gets you to your goal. It fulfills your target. So if I go to an agentic AI or agent AI client and I give him the same exact context, exact prompt, get me to Egypt's World Cup match against Australia in the US, the agentic AI will break this kind of objective into list of tasks or list of actions, list of steps, and it will start to fulfill these steps, and it also have the logic to know that these steps are very dependent. So if I don't get the visa, I have to, reschedule the flight. So it takes care of this kind of the process, okay, and fulfill the process to you to reach your target. So that's a very, I would say, mainstream and very high level difference from a helicopter view between a Gen AI and agentic AI. So most probably in the webinar, we will explain how actually agentic AI performs such logic or such thing. So based on that helicopter view, or based on that on high level, demonstration of the agentic AI, I just brought some definitions from technology vendors and suppliers and from academia as well, just to understand what are the definitions and to have a starting point from a definition perspective. First of all, agentic AI or agent itself, it's not really a standard term. It's not coming from a standardization body. It's a buzz term, so everybody see it from different angle. But at the end, there are some concepts that are in common. So IBM is talking about something or a technology that pursue a goal. So it works towards the goal with limited supervision. So there is no human in the loop. And these AI agents that fulfill your task, they have coordination by orchestration. So orchestration is a very, I would say, coupled term with agents. Google Cloud, it talks about a loop, that something that perceive, reason, plan, act, and reflect. And you will see that this is how it is in the DNA of an agent, this kind of loop. Red Hat talks about, this kind of agent or agentic AI has to work with data and tools because you are not asked to provide a response. You are provided to do the action. So most probably you will integrate with the tool to do the action, right? AWS is talking about autonomously. So it's an autonomous flow. Plus, it adapts to change. You don't get the visa. You have to reschedule the flight, right? Uh, so while doing or undergoing the process, it has to adapt to change. Academia, and it lists a very, and that's a recent research, that there are 4 criteria for agentic AI for an agent. That it sets a goal, not a task. So it's a goal. I want to go to US to attend the match. It selects and invokes the tools to pursue the goal. I will contact this agency. I will contact this API. It maintains the state, or it maintains the memory across the multiple inference. Like whenever I do the inference, whenever I do an action, whenever I communicate with a foundation model to do an action, I maintain the history, I maintain the memory, and then complete the work in a fully autonomous way. So these are the 4 criteria. And then ITSI trying to get this, and TM Forum get this definition into the telco domain. So it's all about autonomy. It's a goals-oriented reasoning loop. It's a loop, right? Because you need to adapt to the change. And it's a be multi-step action. So it's be a procedure. You have to have the procedural knowledge of what you are doing to do that with minimal oversight or with minimal human intervention. So these are the definitions. Let's now, before we go deep, okay, and I know that many of the colleagues here are coming from different backgrounds, and we all know that the term agent itself, is really a buzz term, because we have been working with agents, for the last, I don't know, throughout my career for the last 20 years. So I just brought this to bring you like, not a map, but what are the terms that are being used in the community? So when someone say agent or software agent, classically before the rise of agentic AI, that's actually, a piece of software that do some specific task, no learning, no reasoning. SNMP agent, NMS getting some metrics, even the logging daemons that runs on the host to forward the logs. These are all agents, right? Even a simple control loop, like something thermostat, when it is, below or above 24 Celsius, provide more cooling. So just a simple control loop. Intelligent agent, and that term really comes from the academia, and it's not a new term. It was in 1998 and 19, that if that agent can work reactive and proactive, it can perceive the environment, it can understand the environment. And that's actually like us, right? Before we do any action, we have to understand the context, we have to understand the environment. So if that agent is reactive, proactive, can perceive the environment, and he's goal oriented, plus having social skills, and social skills in academia mean that that agent can communicate with other agents. Okay. And the people coming from orchestration perspective, think of an domain orchestrator talking to another domain orchestrator. So if these attributes are there, then that agent is an intelligent. And guess what? This is not in academia, not necessarily on LLM. It can be with any kind of AI model. While the hype and the focus, and whenever someone says an agent now, actually he refers to an AI agent. An AI agent, that's, I would call it a type of intelligent agent, but the reasoning core is based on LLM, right? So LLM they're good at reasoning, right? They are good at thinking, giving suggestion, giving ways, giving responses. So the reasoning core of intelligent agent is an LLM or a foundation model, and it can plan, it can use tools, it can adapt. And an example that I'm going to talk about it in this webinar, like an autonomous fault management agent, or what we call maybe the dark knock. So from now on, whenever I say agent, I'm referring to the AI agent. So how actually the agent works, and this is a diagram that you will always see whenever the agent framework or the Agentic-AI framework is explained. I'm sure people working on the operations and the closed loop control, these kind of things will think that, yeah, this is very similar to what we are doing, right? But let's just uh, go quickly around these four pillars. The most important thing that it is goal oriented. So I know that I have a goal, right? I need to bring Karim from Dubai to US to attend the match. That's a goal. I need to make sure that uh, the KPIs on that infrastructure or that site is not passing a specific threshold. That's a goal. So these are the goals and kept in memory. So the agent has to perceive, has to understand the context, understand the environment. If you are in a data center, if you take the KPIs from a monitoring tool, if you get the alarms, if you get this kind of feeds, plus some knowledge about the domain from a RAG, most probably, then you have the ability to perceive. So agent can perceive and can build a context to prompt an LLM, right, for reasoning. This is the context. This is my request. Let's now think and plan, reason. Tell me, and I tell you, I challenge you, and I try. I say, no, this is not the good thing. So we try to reason, okay, to get to define an action, what we need to do, okay, to remediate this alarm, to bring the KPIs to its original state, to bring Karim from Dubai to US to attend the match. That's the act part. And then when you do the act part, you do the monitoring observation. Did I meet the target, the goal? Yes or no? Do I need to loop again? Yes or no? So quickly, I'll take you through, like, not a journey, but I'm going to take you through each one of these stages, okay, to understand exactly what's happening in these stages, the perceive, the reason, act, and the observe. And I'll try to bring a Telco example. The perceive, okay? The perceive, and let maybe first start, this is my starting point, okay? It seems like site 41, it has some issue in the KPIs or some alarms. So my goal, I would say daily goal, or my goal as an agent, think of me as a human, as a maintenance engineer. My goal is to restore site 41 to its KPI baseline. Okay. So the list that I'm bringing on the right, these are actually the building blocks that help, okay, the agent to assemble or to build the context, to perceive the environment. I'll take it from bottom up, okay? So tools, right? So agent can read the feeds coming from tools, alarms, topology, inventory, KPIs. I can get that by APIs. I can use MCP, right? Why not? It's a standard protocol. So I get feeds that allow me to understand what's happening on the site. I have a memory. I understand that, you know what? That last week we had the same alarm and it was restored by that procedure. So I have the memory, and for sure I have a session memory history. I have access to RAG. I have some RAM books. I have some documents that I already set in place that I can query and retrieve the knowledge that I need to know about the domain, the facts about my domain. And then I have the context window, and that's the working memory. That's how I prompt the model. So I put all these information in the context window for the model to start thinking with me, reasoning. And if I don't do that, if I do a bad context or a bad prompt, garbage in, garbage out. So the telco example, I now have an alarm, for example. I will ingest that alarm with the recent KPIs, what's happening from history perspective. And for example, I can contact other agents or other sites or whatever to get the neighbor cell state. I collect everything that makes the context strong and convenient enough for the model to start reasoning. I do that, and I go to the reason stage. Okay. I'm not the engine. The agent's not the engine. The engine is always the LLM, right? So the reasoning will come from the LLM, from the foundational model. Okay, this is the context. You know what? Based on what you did and my knowledge, you need to do 1, 2 things for 5. Maybe I can tell you what to do from action perspective. Maybe I can tell you to react like you go and bring me another KPI because I need another KPI to understand what's happening. Okay. From a skills perspective, during the reasoning, there is a term skills, and it's a very well-known term. And I'll give you a very, I would say, personal experience. What is skill? Okay, even for humans. When I joined Orange Business Services after graduation, I was really, fascinated by the fact that they have a document called Way of Work. Wow. The way of work, for me, I take it, I understand the procedural knowledge or the procedural how to work in that team. For example, it tells me your responsibility is to do day zero configuration. So you go to this folder, you copy the day zero configuration, you do these commands, you push it on the router, and then you go and update that system and raise a ticket. So if I have this skill, I can do my job. And exactly the same in the agentic AI context, that there's some artifacts called skills, YAMLs file, that actually define how to do the task. Think of it like site provisioning, site rollout, these kind of things are all skills. And then the goals and the guardrail constraints, like we want to do something, but for example, we cannot go below that KPIs. You know what? If we are going to do an action that is not reversible, you need to contact a human. So all the things happening during the reasoning, and in the skill slide, I'm bringing an example. So from telco perspective, the reasoning will correlate the signals, and do some sort of an RCA. And based on this kind of reasoning, it will conclude that, you know what, someone added a bad parameter from a last night action or downtime window, and the action is a rollback. You need to do a rollback. So from an action perspective, you need to do the rollback. So you need to call some functions, right? Or you need to call some tools. You need to push some configuration. So you can interrogate a provisioning tool or automation tool. If you have API access, you can do that. Maybe you want another KPI, so you will interrogate the system for another KPI. So there's a lot of flows that you can use, but at the end, you need to apply the action, use MCP. You can delegate the task to another agent by A2A. You know what? If the action is labeled as gated, then you need approval. So then you can do the HITL human in the loop, right? You can ask humans for approval. So the action here in the telco is a rollback via a specific controller, start to reroute traffic, and if it is high impact, it's gated and needs the human to be interrogated. Last thing, which is completes the loop, that you do the action, right? So you need to observe what are the results, right? So, and you write that in the memory because you need to update the session and even your long-term memory. And you do evaluation. And if you meet your goal, your objective, you stop. If not, you loop. And that's the loop. So if the KPIs is recovered, then we are fine. If we are not, then we go to the loop again. So I will finish that section by, just giving now, trying to making it easy a little bit. So we'll go back to the World Cup example, and we do the same. Okay. So I asked the agent, get me to Egypt's World Cup match against Australia and the US. So the agent knowledge will come most probably from an LLM just to understand this kind of travel, visa, the steps, right? Because LLM is the engine. From the memory, this is my client, my application, I work with him. So he knows my Egyptian passport. He knows that I'm in Dubai. He have access to my calendar. So that's the memory. Uh, he can have access to some official documentation that help him to understand the requirements, or actually what is actually the rules for the US visa, just to understand I'm eligible or not, and the other things. So he can use also RAG to get this kind of knowledge. And then tools also can use tools APIs to understand the context about what are the fares and tickets. And then from reasoning perspective, and he knows that procedure knowledge told him that it's a visa and then flight and then ticket hotel, right? And it makes sense that I book a refundable flight till I get the visa. From an action perspective, he will go apply for the US visa. This will not happen most probably, but if it is doable, apply for the US visa, book the ticket, secure the match ticket, and reserve the hotel. And you know what? If the visa is not approved, then he has to adapt. He has to maybe reschedule the flight till the visa is approved. So this is like, on a nutshell, what the agent or the Agentic-AI is doing in a telco example, and I would say in a mainstream example. I'll just take a minute, okay, just to see the questions. If there is something like ad hoc, I can answer. If not, we can continue, and then we'll have time to the questions after the webinar. Okay, let's maybe just give it like I would say more focus on the content and leave questions for the end, because I'm sure with the accumulation of information, there will be some information. And for some reasons, I tried to open the Q&A, but I couldn't. But I hope I can do that at the end of the webinar. So let's now focus on the telco. Okay, I'm coming from telco background. I assume that many of the colleagues here are coming also from telco background. So let's see the momentum on the telco side. So I tried to bring some recent surveys and recent papers from the market. So I brought the NVIDIA state of art of AI. It started in 2024, and now we have the release of 2026, and also from TM4. What is interesting, and it happened to me that, over the last 5 years, whenever we used to present to the customer slides about technological evolution, we used to put the AI at the far right of the roadmap, like it's all within the roadmap. Okay, and customers were being sarcastic about that when the time comes to see the AI is actually, in the near future, or it's happening, why it's always in the roadmap. So what is very interesting that the survey from NVIDIA saying that 97% of telecom professionals are using AI, mainly in operations. Okay. And if you don't use it in your domain, this doesn't mean that it's not used in other domains. Because, I feel that there's some disappointment in some operators or some teams that were not using AI, but maybe in other teams that they are using that. And what is really interesting, and that we started to see more and more operators are declaring that we are L4 of autonomy, following the TMF autonomy definition. And I encourage you, just go now to LinkedIn with recent conferences and search for this one. Level 4 autonomy. You will find many operators, especially in the Gulf, are expressing that. So we are there. Okay, it's not a roadmap item. It is there, even embraced by 6G. So most probably it is coming. What are the standards? Mainly in the telecom, people are somehow working heavily with TM4, okay? Especially that they define this L0, L5 autonomy levels, and they have even the Catalyst project Dark Knock. We'll talk about that because it's very trending. And we have the agent-to-agent over telecom also in TM Forum. So TM Forum is creating really a good buzz around Agentic-AI. And as we all notice, ORAN also is tackling that. As I told you, in 3GPP and HC in 6G, it is coming. From a protocol perspective, MCP and A2A is actually gaining popularity and becoming like the de facto or the standard protocols for agent-to-tool and agent-to-agent communication. And that's now even I would say, many of these are being handed from the original contributor like Anthropic and Google to Linux Foundation. So this is where if you want to get more info, more data, more things. So let me now explain to you the autonomy levels or the autonomy ladder because it's very trending, and if you are in telecom, the most probably you need to know that. Okay, so TMF and the contributing members, contributing operators, they defined 5 levels of autonomy. Okay. And level 0 is manual, level 5 is full autonomy. They call it human on the loop, not human in the loop. So human is just being informed. But within that, this shows the evolution or the evolving of the technology adoption within the operators. So most of the operators are in L2 and L3, and I tried just to map it to maybe some terms that you may hear in the telco environment. So in level 2, we're talking about a domain orchestration, like an orchestrator that can orchestrate or automate the workflows within the domain. That maps to the concept of NFVO, the core domain orchestrator, the RAN domain orchestrator. It's like a scripted automation, robotic, the RPA, these kind of things, right? That actually are scripted. There's some sort of a policy that control that, and it is actually within a domain. And level 3, you can map that to the adoption of a multi-domain orchestration. The well-known architecture of having some sort of an end-to-end service orchestrator or a domain orchestrator that talks or communicates with multiple domains. It also includes the adoption of RAG use cases, agents, some sort of approval gates. So most of the operators are between L2 and L3. What we started to see now, more and more announcement that many operators are going to level 4. And level 4, mainly the main pillar of that is actually agentic AI. So when someone says L4, most probably he talks about an adoption of agentic AI, even multi-agent system. Like it's not just single agent, and it's a high autonomy that brings a minimal human intervention. And then L5, that's the future state where you have a full autonomy with minimal human intervention. Just a personal reflection on TM Forum. My issue with TM Forum is that their publications are not easy to get. They need the subscription, they need this kind of things, and I really don't find any compelling reason to do that. Comparing that to standardization bodies, HC3GPP, to open source groups. And I think now it's time to be more open and have these documents published. I may have access because of my account on my membership, but you need to log in, you need to have an account based on your organization. This is something really I don't favor about TMF. Okay, so let's go to use cases. And I personally, have issues with the term use cases, especially in when you present technology evolution, because use cases actually should be left or should be handled by innovation. Because I do believe that if you give your team the empowerment, if you do a hackathon, you will find like hundreds of ideas, of innovative ideas that can turn into use cases. But what I'm bringing here are the most famous use cases that are using agentic AI. So the first one is the autonomous fault management or the autonomous network operations. And I'll try to map the same logic on what's happening actually from a network operations perspective. And it is the same example. So you need a system that can detect, that can perceive, that can understand the context, that there is an issue, and there are other inputs that formulate the context, and then correlate these inputs, okay, doing the reasoning with LLM or whatever sort of knowledge, and then find the root cause out of that. And by the way, the root cause is always a painful thing for operators because of the stack. Now we have a very complex stack, right? We have passive elements, we have hardware, we have software, we have middleware, we have applications, we have storage, we have networking, we have data fabric, we have GPUs, we have AI platforms. So the stack is complex. So getting the root cause is really a difficult thing. So if you can do that autonomously, that will be perfect. And then based on that correlation and root cause, he gets, or the agent gets the plan, what to do. Okay. And when I say reflect, it actually checks, okay, what can be done or what will be done, what about the consequences of running this action, and start to debate or start to reason. You know what? No, I need another action. I need another thing. A typical conversation that you do with a Gen AI application, right? And then you do the action, and based on the policy, whether it is gated, it needs an approval, yes or no, and then you verify. So that's a reactive, right? A reactive case where a fault happens. But what about the being proactive, right? And being proactive, I picked a use case about rain and energy optimization, and let's just quickly explain the case. I'm not a radio expert, but let me just explain to you the context. In some time of the day or even some time of the year, there are actually no terminals or no people or no devices are available in a specific geographical area. So there is no need to keep that high power sites working as usual, because it's maybe a good opportunity to lower the energy and save the energy, because you don't need really that kind of coverage. So that's the context. You observe that you are in that state, right? From the traffic pattern, from the cell load, it seemed that, if I do the right reasoning, and the reasoning here is a prediction, and that's a finding. That's a finding, because in that use case, the core, the core engine here is not an LLM. It might be like a predictive AI machine learning model, right? That can do the forecast. That, you know what, it seemed that, like, for example, uh, in the coming few months, whatever, the demand is not high. Let's take an example of the Hajj in Saudi Arabia. So in the Hajj, you have a very condensed uh, demand on the coverage at a specific time of the year, and after that, you don't need it, right? So there is a very fair prediction that you will not need that energy that much in the rest of the year. So based on that prediction, you can start to tune the parameter. You can turn some resources into idle. You can do that, but you know what? The guard here, or the guard, or the limitation, or not the policy for you, is that you cannot violate the SLA or the SLO, the service level objective, or the service level agreement. And then you verify the quality of experience and do a rollback if this is not happening. So the catch here, and that fits well with the academia, although agentic AI, and this is true, I'm not denying that, it's based on LLMs, but there are some use cases where the reasoning can happen, okay, with a classic predictive AI. And this is something that we have in academia, okay? So now it's time to tell you about a very trendy term that most probably you have heard about it, or you'll be hearing about if they're in the operation, which is the dark knock. And dark knock or lights out, these are not the term that I picked, but this is actually how the community, or even TMF, because TMF is the one who named it like that, I guess, because the Catalyst project in TMF form is called dark knock. And dark knock is actually a network operations center that can run by itself. That's it. So it's dark. No need to be the human to be there to take any action. So it can detect, diagnose, remediate, and verify with no human or with no operator page it. And guess what? In reality, I see that in my work. It is actually an ask by most of the operators because they see a big value deploying agentic AI or dark knock in the operation. So operations actually is the perfect place, to activate an agentic AI use case. So, but they need that for the whole stack. So take into consideration that now the stack is very complex. So when you say a dark knock, it's a turnkey solution. You cannot say, I'm giving you a solution on the Kubernetes level and another vendor giving a solution on the hardware. No, they need a full solution for the data center or for the whole stack. So I just brought some names that you will see it, spreading. Most probably, they refer to the same idea, like autonomous network, dark knock, the zero touch coming from HC, ADN from Huawei, intent-based operation from Cisco, SDN, self-driving network, not the classic SDN from Juniper, and many other words you will find it, but most probably they refer to the same thing, like autonomous operation. And when you put that in the knock perspective, you get the term of the dark knock. Our last section, and I picked two things: skills and interoperability between the agents. Okay, there are other concepts I talked about it, like the memory, the knowledge. We can go deep in other things, but I just picked the skills and the interoperability because they are very trending, and I think they have really some core concepts around it. So skills. I gave you the example of the skills, when I joined Orange BS, but the wow, that's the skill you need to know to fulfill the task. So they label that and they call that with the procedural knowledge. What is the procedure, to do this action? And think of it here like as a full triage, because if you want to clear an alarm, there is, a set of steps that any LLM doesn't know because it's a very specific to your domain, and it has to be defined, because if you don't define that and you just apply the action randomly, things will get messed up, right? So you need to clear that system. You need to raise a ticket. You need to escalate. To close the ticket after that. You need to invoke another system. So this is the procedure that you need to understand as an agent. So the skills or that MD file is the one that gives the agent that knowledge. And people who are familiar with the VNF package and this kind of packaging, it's an archive that include multiple files. So you get the skill MD, and it has a name and description. You get some bundled scripts similar to the VNF descriptor if people are familiar with that. During the discussion or the initial startup, I mean the talks between the agent and the LLM, imagine that you have hundreds of skills within the domain and hundreds of files. If you try to put that in the context, it will be a mess, and most probably you'll end up with hallucination. So you need to do some sort of progressive disclosure, and I will show that in the next slide, how actually you can refer to the skill without writing the whole skill. And now it is an open standard by Anthropic, and it is being used, and it's a very trained word. And there are maybe some confusion about in the community about skill in MCP, but that's very, I would say, clear that MCP give the agent the capability to communicate with tools and data, while the skill actually give them the procedural knowledge, what is actually the actual workflow that you need to fulfill to get the things done. And the example that I brought, that this is the first part, which the agent will always bring in the context during the reasoning. You know what? Just the name and description. Just the name and description. And when the LLM decide that, you know what, you need these skills, in the reasoning starts now, the agent starts to put actually starts to load the skill. Okay, not just mention the thing. So there are two steps classically that, during the initial, communication with the LLM, you don't load the whole skills. You just, put name and description. And then after that, once the skill is selected, that yes, this is the skill that you need. For example, that's the rollback. We need the rollback, so you need the rollback skill. You start to load the skill and understand exactly what do you need to do, because this what will shape the actions that will follow the reasoning. That's the skill, and it's a very important, and it's getting trendy because using cloud and this kind of thing, they're using the same concept. So you need to define the skill to actually define exactly what you need to do for your task. The interoperability, and I'm sure what we see now maybe match the classic, domain orchestration, multi-domain orchestration, the classic 5G network slicing thing, but it talks from an agent perspective. And you see that an example like there's a RAN agent, core agent, transport agent. They have the capability to communicate together in a direct way, maybe using the A2A. But we know that in telco, this is not happening because we have always this kind of the orchestrator or the orchestrator agent or the multi-domain orchestration. So this guy is actually responsible of orchestrating and facilitating the communication between different agents. So that you see here the A2A, the agent to agent, and as I said before, it was a Google contribution and then handed over to Linux Foundation. And when the agent require to interact with a specific domain, with a specific tool, with a specific repository, with any external system, okay, then MCP is used. By the way, both are just JSON, JSON themed communication. So most probably you have seen that uh, all over the last 10 years with the communication, like for example in HCNFV and these kind of things. So the MCP, the Model Context Protocol, give you the ability for the agent to communicate with external systems, interrogate a monitoring system, get some KPIs, get tools, get that kind of things. And that's the contribution by Anthropic. So this is the interoperability thing. I think people are happy, but practically, when you see the solutions coming from the telco vendors in particular, there is always some caveats, and we we got used to that. I mean, these are like the lesson learned from the last 10 years. My last slide is the takeaways, and I'll try to just to summarize the main points here. So agentic AI is not Gen AI, so it's not a chatbot. Chatbot or agent or general generative AI can give you suggestions, can give you list of steps, but actually agentic goes another step and fulfill the goal, fulfill the action. It is very coupled with the loop: perceive, reasons, act, and observe. Still, the reasoning, the brain is still in the model. It's not the agent. Okay, that's the LM. What the LM really good at reasoning. And then the tools and the reg and the runtime do the rest. Usually in the prompt or in the reasoning, the agent try to gate or try to control the LLM and the reasoning logic. And this is actually what we always do, also do as human with any chat, GPT or Gemini or any Gen AI client. We try to give him the right context, the right prompt, so that he provides responses in the context that I require. That what gives importance for the context that the agent builds. Okay, garbage in, garbage out. If it fails to perceive the environment and put all this information in the context and start to communicate with the LLM, then most probably you'll get a garbage. So the efficiency of the agent is actually, I can map it to the efficiency or the accuracy or the how actually the context itself is efficient in prompting the foundational model. Because it really can do disasters if it is not curated. So there is always gates, of approvals and guardrails and policies. This can happen in the reasoning stage, and also in the act or the runtime stage. For telco, I tell you, Dark Knock is very trending. Okay, all the operators are competing to reach L4, and hopefully L5. So there is a lot of momentum happening. Many vendors are involved. I'm also personally following that. So I think from now till 2030, or with the rise of 6G, there will be more and more use cases and more deployments. And as I said, it is happening. It's not anymore in the roadmap. It is happening, and I saw, for example, SSE and Huawei were demonstrating something in one of the recent Telco conferences. So it is happening, and I hope that webinar provided some core concepts for you to start navigate the technology of the agentic AI. That was my last slide. I would like to thank you all, and I will now stop the recording and see the question, and I hope that we have time to go through the question. Thank you.